The Realme X50 Pro is yet another affordable flagship phone from Realme, a flagship killer if you want to call it that. But this thing has so many of those really core specs that everyone's looking for, but at a really decent price too. Realme have actually made a slightly more compact phone with the Realme X50 Pro. If you compare it to the Realme X2 Pro, it actually comes in with a slightly smaller screen and it feels like a much smaller and more manageable phone overall. It's just at that tipping point where it doesn't quite reach 6.5 inches for the screen, so it is definitely a more manageable device overall. The design has definitely taken a step forward from the X2 Pro as well. You get this really nice matte finish, which we're seeing more and more Android manufacturers bring to their phones in 2020. Realme have spent their money in a few key areas that most people want. The first is the screen. You get a 90 Hz refresh rate on this one, which for this price point is a really good spec and doesn't actually get beaten until you start getting into higher price points. The screen is flat as well instead of being curved, so that keeps the price down too, but a lot of people prefer flat screens anyway. I think Realme have ticked off all the boxes when it comes to the screen at this price point. It's an AMOLED, the colors are good, it gets very bright, you have the 90 Hz refresh rate, and they've gone for the cutout design in this phone. That's different from, for example, the X2 Pro, which had a water drop notch. This is a design that pretty much every single Android manufacturer is using this year. Even though the cutout is a bit bigger, it takes up a bit more space on the screen, you do get two useful cameras in there, which we'll get onto in a minute. Something pretty unique about this phone at this price point is the literally amazing fast charging that it gives you at 65 watts. That is something we've never really seen before at this price. Realme actually gave us 50 watt fast charging in the X2 Pro about 6 months ago, and they've gone even better this time around, and honestly it does change the way you think about charging your phone. Fast charging speeds are getting quicker and quicker. We're seeing 30 watt, 40 watt, 50 watt, but at this price point, 65 watts is a great spec. A really cool feature about this phone as well is that when you are charging it, you can actually see the percentage points fly by. It's not something that should sway you either way to get the phone, but I think it is a nice touch to see just how quick your battery is charging. Realme decided not to put wireless charging in the phone and just concentrate on that super quick, pretty much the quickest wired charging that we get in any phone right now. There is also no headphone jack on the phone. Realme have their own wireless buds and also completely wireless earbuds too, so they expect you to use those. They're quite affordable, and we're seeing that the headphone jack is disappearing from more and more phones, and Realme is certainly one of those brands who wants to get rid of it even in these cheaper phones. So both the Snapdragon 865, which is the best processor you can get for Android right now, and that 90 Hz refresh rate are going to be a very good combination for gaming. It doesn't really matter what game you chuck at this phone right now. Those are pretty much amongst the best specs you're going to get. So if you are gaming PUBG, for example, or pretty much any game with a high refresh rate, it's going to work well on this phone. I feel like the cutout being in the top left is a little bit of a better place for it, because when you do rotate the phone and you're playing games, it sort of gets hidden by your thumb anyway. So even though it is a dual cutout and bigger compared to single cutouts, it still doesn't really affect gameplay too much. Realme have included a good Haptics Engine in here. It feels very clicky. It's definitely on the better side that I've used, so that's a very good thing to have in the phone when you're gaming. You want those clicky haptic feedback. So getting onto that cutout at the front, you actually have two cameras. There's no depth sensor here. You get a real main image sensor and an ultra wide camera too. If we're comparing this to slightly more expensive phones like the Mi 10, for example, Xiaomi have spent a lot of money on that camera hardware this year, whereas Realme have gone for some tried and tested hardware. The 64 megapixel main image sensor that they're using is a Samsung GW1. It's been around for a fairly long while already. It was used in the Realme X2 Pro. I've used this image sensor in a ton of different phones, and you usually do get very good photographs out of it. It is not one of the more expensive camera sensors. This is used in cheaper phones with cheaper processors, but Realme decided that with the cost in mind, this was a good camera sensor to go for. I like the fact that they have an ultra-wide camera on here and a real 2x telephoto lens. The force sensor is a black and white or a depth sensor. I think it doubles as both of those things. And considering that they have 3 other very useful actual camera sensors, I'm absolutely fine with Realme including that one too. A good feature of the Realme that I found is that in video, it's really easy to switch between the lenses, and that's something that I wish Xiaomi phones did better. When you are filming video, you can switch between them seamlessly. The buttons are still on the screen, so you can just press the ultra wide, for example, or the main, or the 2x, or even into 5x, and it just zooms right in for you. You can't record 4K off the ultra wide camera though, so if you are someone who prefers to shoot in 4K, it will not be available on the ultra wide, and because it doesn't have enough megapixels to shoot native 4K resolution, it won't be able to come in a software update either. You also get everything you expect to find in a flagship Android phone. You get 960 frames a second slow-mo, you get time-lapse and macro mode and panorama mode. You can also shoot in 64 megapixel mode if you want to get a high resolution shot. You can get up to 20 times zoom off this camera with optical plus digital zoom. I think anything up to around about 10x, you can sometimes still get really usable images. 5x actually looks really decent. Pushing it to 20x is always going to lose some quality. It just looks a little bit blurry, but anything from the ultra wide up to about 10x I think is decent on this phone. Realme UI for the moment at least still looks a lot like Oppo's Color OS. Realme are changing this slowly, changing the icon shapes and the designs. I think it does a very good job of just not getting in the way of anything that you want to do, and you can't really ask more than that in an operating system. So at this $500 or $600 price point, you just get so many features these days. This has the fastest fast charging, the best processor, a really good high refresh rate screen. There's just so many options, and this is yet another good phone in this price point. Subscribe for all the latest tech news and videos. That's it for now, but I'll see you in the next one.